Hello, welcome to the Revenge of the Show, and this is the ships video. So it also has the figures and the dioramas, and you'll see in the other video it's planes, and you'll see some of the tanks here because they're in the dioramas. So video, if you didn't see your tank over there, that's because they put it on a diorama table. And this was in McHenry, Illinois, where the food was fantastic. Gotta tell you, the food is really good there. It's a really nice venue. Anyway, like and subscribe. Check out the other video. Check out my other stuff. And here it is with the ships and with some historical speeches from famous people. And yeah, check out the other video from the show. Bye-bye.
Flying down from Nova Scotia today, I was looking at the country as I always do, and there was something wrong. There were no shell holes. There were no bomb craters. The bridges were all in. The houses still had roofs. The marshalling yards where you collect freight trains didn't look like junk heaps. It's all wrong. And it occurred to me how very fortunate you are that through our blood and your bonds, we crushed the Germans before he got here. Couldn't keep my mind on the work, really. But it was very thrilling. And I took it, I think, in the way it was intended. This great ovation of the people of Greater Boston was not for George Patton. George Patton is simply a hook on which the great acts of the Third Army are hanged. I don't mean for death. I am simply a symbol. The ovation was for these men here. And remember this. Remember this, you don't have to be a corpse to be a hero. There they sit, they're not corpses. When I think of the hospitals, in which over 130,000 other men of the Third Army have had a damn good time, usually. That is a backhanded compliment to the medical service of the United States Army. Because had it not been for that wonderful service, these men would not have had a good time. But when you think that only 1% of the soldiers who got to the evacuation hospitals died, you have to take off your hat to the doctors and the nurses. I do.
Service as you have given me. In the early war, the British Empire stood alone against the combined might of the Axis powers. And during those days, we suffered some great disasters. But we stood firm, on the defensive, but striking blows where we could. Later, we were joined by Russia and America. And from then onwards, the end was in no doubt. Let us never forget what we owe to our Russian and American allies. This great allied team has achieved much in war, may it achieve even more in peace. Without doubt, great problems lie ahead. The world will not recover quickly from the great upheaval that has taken place. There is much work for each one of us. I would say that we must face up to that work with the same fortitude that we faced up to the worst days of this war. It may be that some difficult times lie ahead for our country, and for each one of us personally. If it happens thus, then our discipline will pull us through. But we must remember that the best discipline implies the subordination of self for the benefit of the community. And we who remain have seen this thing through to the end. We all have a feeling of great joy and thankfulness that we have been preserved to see this day. What I have to say is very simple and quite short. Will you, Now, we've assembled here today to accept the surrender terms which have been made with a delegation from the German army. I will now read out the terms of that instrument of surrender. The German command agrees to the surrender of all German armed forces in Holland, in northwest Germany, including the Frisian Islands and Heligoland and all other islands, in Schleswig-Holstein and in Denmark, to the Commander-in-Chief, 21st Army Group. This to include all naval ships in these areas. These forces to lay down their arms and to surrender unconditionally. All hostilities on land, on sea, or in the air by German forces in the above areas to cease at 0800 hours British double summer time on Saturday, the 5th of May, 1945. The German command to carry out at once and without argument or comment all further orders that will be issued by the Allied powers on any subject. Disobedience of orders or failure to comply with them will be regarded as a breach of these surrender terms and will be dealt with by the Allied powers in accordance with the accepted laws and usages of war.
December, and this site, the Pearl Harbor Navy Yard, are a fitting time and place for me to tell you that all 6 of the Japanese aircraft carriers that opened this war by attacking us here 3 years ago now lie at the bottom of the sea. Of these last ghosts of stolen Japanese glory at Pearl Harbor. It should be interesting and perhaps inspiring to you men and women whose skill, sacrifice, and devotion have made it possible if I recall to you a bit of the history of another ghost fleet. I refer to those American warships that lay hurt, some of them on the bottom of this harbor, 3 years ago this noon. Most of this ghost fleet, which our enemy said was sunk or damaged beyond repair, is today haunting our enemy in a most un-ghost-like fashion. Thanks again to your sweat and toil. You remember the light cruiser Helena. She survived Pearl Harbor to live and fight and die again. She made a record which is almost legendary. Took part in 8 separate actions before she was finally lost in July 1943. You remember the light cruisers Honolulu and Raleigh. Their log of battle actions since you sent them out to sea again reads like a partial history of this Pacific War. You remember the destroyer Shaw, the man-layer Oglala, the tender Curtis, and the repair ship Vestal. I'm proud to tell you that each of them is back in action today. The destroyers Cassin and Downs did not go back as whole ships, but their boilers, machinery, and some sections of their hulls were sent back to make a new Cassin and a new Downs. They carry on the fight today. The target ship Utah lies on the bottom of this harbor, and although she could be raised, I rather hope she may become a permanent monument to the day when our national will was reborn. The battleship Oklahoma was raised by your ingenuity. Even the Arizona was not a total loss. You yourselves cut her up for scrap, and you know, therefore, that the very armor of our sides has gone back into the fight against the enemy. You remember the battleship Nevada. She lay beached right over there just 3 years ago. Yet on Invasion Day, a few months ago, she bombarded the Normandy coast and did an excellent job of it. That leaves me 5 more ghost ships to tell you about. They are all big ones. The battleships Pennsylvania, Maryland, Tennessee, California, and West Virginia. That list will seem ironic to the Japanese Admiralty because if you add to these 5 the name of the Mississippi, you have the exact list of battleships that lined up across Surigao Strait shortly before dawn on October 25th and sent all 8 Japanese warships opposing them to the bottom. They must indeed have seemed like the ghosts of Surigao to the enemy, if the enemy had time to see them, because in less than 15 minutes, those Pearl Harbor cripples poured into that Jap fleet what was perhaps the greatest, quickest, and most devastating naval gunfire in the history of warfare. That was at almost the very hour of the same day when the Zui Kaku, last of the 6 Jap carrier attackers at Pearl Harbor, was being sunk off Luzon to the northeast. The lucky train had finally reached the end of her left. That is the history of Pearl Harbor so far. I tell it only because it symbolizes what you men and women of Pearl Harbor and of our Navy yards and the mainland have achieved by your skill and devotion. You have been the surgeons of the fleet. You have reformed the broken sides of wounded ships and sent them out to fight again. I do not have to say well done. The guns of the ships you sent back into battle to speak America's gratitude more eloquently than I could. Your record of war bond purchases also is a challenge to the American people. Nearly 90% of the civilian workers of the Pearl Harbor Navy Yard are regular buyers of war bonds. Every shop in the yard is in the over 90% class. You are thus helping furnish the shells we fire in battle from the guns of the very ships you have reconditioned for action. Admiral Furlong is rightly proud of you. I am proud of you. America is proud of you.